What wedding moment made you think they are not going to last long? When the maid of honor professed her love for my brother during her toast at my brother's wedding, and her husband walked up to the head table, picked her up and carried her away before she could embarrass him further. They lasted about 3 months after that. My brother and his wife on the other hand are still happily married 20 years later. Oh God, I know someone who acts like this. She's been married 3 or 4 times, numerous other relationships, 2 kids, with first husband, and keeps saying, over and over again, that she'd leave current partner if the guy of her dreams, someone she had a crush on in high school 20 years ago, ever let her have a chance. It's really pathetic and cringy. Showed up to the wedding of a friend of my husband's who I knew casually. When we arrived at the church, the groom was very drunk in the parking lot, and getting drunker by the minute. I thought it was kinda nuts since it was a full Catholic ceremony which involved lots of kneeling and standing. I honestly have no idea how he made it thought that, but he did. At the reception, he proceeded to continue the drinking party, while his new wife cried in the washroom. When it was time for the first dance, he kind of stumbled around the dance floor despite a year of dance lessons. When it was time for him to take his new wife's garter off and throw it to the bachelors, he instead did a striptease type dance and got himself down to his underwear, in front of many elderly family members. People were shocked and talking, and all in all it was a shit show. I gave this marriage a year or 2 tops. They, however, are still married 25 plus years later. I was kindly included in a last-minute +1 to the wedding of a family friend who I'd never met before. At the rehearsal dinner, or the German equivalent, the Polterabend, the guests smashed ceramic and porcelain items on the ground. I was fresh in Germany, so this was all pretty out of context and frightening, but my boyfriend explained that it's a tradition, reminding the couple that life is sometimes difficult and you have to work together to clean it up. The bride kind of half-heartedly motioned to the groom to sweep it up. He did a little bit, then just moved on to talk to his friends, leaving most of the shards strewn around the yard. Additionally, I don't think I saw the couple talk to each other once over the next 3 days of celebrations. It was a gorgeous wedding, and I'm so grateful that I was invited. Really good way to begin living in a new country, but it wasn't surprising to hear that they divorced a few years later. My college roomie went on his honeymoon to Jamaica alone. The bride's family picked their resort and paid for everything. Only the bride refused to get on the plane at the literal gate, breaking down and crying and having panic attacks. Turns out this had happened every time before for sports trips and family vacations, but they thought for some reason this time it will work. She is married now, and planned a honeymoon on an island. Rather than throw away $10,000 in vacation, her groom went alone. He said it was great. His wife wasn't mad, but her family was, for some reason. They lasted nearly 5 years and split for best of friends. I was the best man at a wedding a few years back. At the rehearsal dinner, his future in-laws were treating him like crap. They were bossing him around, making him do crap, and talking down to him. They didn't let him hang out with his groomsmen afterwards while the bride went out and got drunk. They are now divorced. Edit to add a little detail, yes, he should have stood up for himself. His ex's parents were making him do crap for the wedding the next day, and he was too nice to say number. For you youngsters out there, this is cliché, but you really do marry the family and the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. Wedding photographer here. I can think of a few. Full-blown row during dinner, had another couple fist fight during a first dance. An infamous one for me was leaving a venue late one night, and as I'm walking to the train I can see the bride down an alley, on her knees with the best man. I was the wedding photographer for a reality TV show. End of the night, I'm having a few drinks with the film crew and the groom has come up to me and one of the producers and says, I think I've made a big mistake. So we're trying to be reassuring and telling him it's natural to second guess such a big decision, to which he replies, no, I mean I think him gay. I had them both on Facebook. The drama the next week was mesmerizing to watch unfold. I've got a ton of these stories. Edit, since you asked, was working with a video guy who had the bride and groom on radio mix. Sat around waiting for the evening action to kick off and the video dude called me over and said, "Listen to this." Groom was talking to one of the bridesmaids about how they had to end their affair now he's married. Not a how could you tell they wouldn't last, but shooting in an old church on the hottest day of the year. Watching the groom wait for the bride and he's swaying back and forth. Next thing he's fainted, fallen forward and slammed his mouth into a stone step, smashed his front teeth out, blood everywhere. Had a bride and groom on a trampoline for photos. Groom's heading downward. Bride's about to go up. He lands on her dress just as she goes up and she pops out the top of the dress, boobs flailing around in the air. Shot a traveler wedding which erupted into a massive brawl. Watched a drunk usher knock over a wedding cake. Weddings are amazing. I've been doing this for about 12 years and seen some sights, but I still love shooting them even now. The groom took the stupid cake thing to an extreme. The bride had given him his bite and mashed a little on his chin or nose. He then took a piece and mashed it into her face so hard that I was expecting her to end up with a bloody nose. Cake and frosting got up her nose, in her eyes, down the front of her dress, etc. The bride had to go get cleaned up, had her makeup redone, and was ugly crying within an hour of saying, "I do." He didn't give a fuck. The woman who made my wedding cake is a friend of the family, and when she was doing the consult with us, she told us that one condition that she had was that we had to have a conversation about serving each other cake. We could do whatever we wanted, we could not do it, we could serve each other nicely, we could dab it on our noses, we could do a face plant in the cake. It was our cake, but we had to agree on it together beforehand. We just cut the cake together but didn't serve it to each other. Apparently she had seen more than one marriage that got off to a rocky start because the couple was not on the same page about cake, and it was very important to her that her cake would not be a source of conflict in our marriage. A month before the wedding, the couple made an appointment with me, the church music director, organist, to plan music for the ceremony. Each made suggestions on music he or she would like, but no matter how many pieces were considered and demonstrated, they couldn't agree on anything, and would get into heated arguments over processionals, recessionals, vocal solos, and prelude music, even though they were all good possibilities. The bride and groom simply seemed indifferent to one another's wishes and needs. In the end, based on what I heard each of them most wanting, I offered compromises in an effort to bring about peace, selections which they finally agreed to. They were engaged, but showed no signs of being in love. The ceremony was delayed, because the bride and groom were on the phone with the groom's mother, who refused to come to the wedding, trying to be talked into still going through with it. Apparently they had a huge and physical fight the night before. Their roommate at the time didn't come either. He told me what he saw in the house the night before was enough for him to know this wedding was doomed and they should not be dating, let alone getting married. Edit, in an attempt to answer some of these questions. First, this was about 20 years ago and we are all in our 40s now and have moved on with life since. So, I don't know why the mother wasn't there. I just remember thinking it was weird when I noticed she wasn't, and then later heard they were on the phone with her. The roommate was visibly angry when I went to pick him up for the wedding. Outright refused to come, and I think ended up moving out and basically disappearing after. He was a big dude who worked as a bouncer at clubs, and my impression was he had to go into work mode the night before in his living room and wasn't happy about it. I never heard details and I wouldn't have felt right asking for them. I am still friends, in the sense that I see them every few years, with both the bride and groom. See my comment below for how they turned out. Happy ending considering. I should also add, the years in which they dated and got married, all of us were very heavy binge drinkers. We were in our 20s and worked service industry jobs. It seemed normal almost for this much drama to be around. Looking back, I don't have the same opinions. No one involved ended up in rehab or prison and all live relatively normal lives now. This was my sister's best friend and it was a bachelorette party moment. Bride had been having an affair, Everyone knew it. The groom's friends tried to tell him, but she convinced him they were making it up. I mean, at that point it was just sad. She actually had the balls to force fiancé to apologize to the guy she was sleeping with for the accusations. The night of the bachelorette party she actually took all her bridesmaids back to the other guy's house and spent the night with him. He came to their wedding. It was so awkward. Everyone knew and everyone was talking. The groom was told, but chose to overlook it. After the wedding she insisted the other guy come on vacations with her and her husband and included him in all their social functions. Now, if they're non-monogamous, whatever, go crazy. But her husband was an absolute wreck about it for years and she just kept gaslighting him. No one could convince him to leave her. She told my sister that a fairer guy insisted he would never marry her and didn't want kids, so she was using fiancé to get them. They ended up divorcing 2 years later after their second child was born. She immediately moved in with the fair guy and they did end up getting married. The bride and groom did the first dance, then spent the rest of their reception completely apart from each other, getting shit-faced with their own separate friend groups. The only other dancing all night was the bride dancing with her high school friends, the father-daughter dance and the mother-son dance, during which the groom was crying. The best man's speech didn't mention the bride at all and basically boiled down to, "Groom, you're married now, but our bond is older and stronger. All of our hunting and fishing trips together are the best thing in our lives. Can't wait for more." Such a sad, desperate atmosphere. They made it a little over 1 year. I was the maid of honor. They seemed like the perfect couple, together for nearly 10 years and had this big, expensive, beautiful wedding. Bride would have been happy with the small event but told me groom had a big family and had insisted. Alarm bells hit when I sat with her parents in the front row and realized the groom to bride ratio was so massively off. The groom had 3 best men, as well as ushers etc. His sister and one best man read something during the ceremony, and then all 3 said long speeches about him at dinner. It was all about him. The photographer was even his friend's mom, so she kept whisking away the boys for these hilarious slad shoots. The bride was ignored most of the day, and in the evening he got too drunk, spilt a drink over her wedding gown and danced with his friends. It felt more like a big birthday party than a joint event. I'd never seen that side to him, but I felt so sorry for my friend. It was like she was just there to be a prop to his plans and look good. 3 months after the wedding he began being emotionally abusive. A month after that he admitted he'd been having an affair for years, then left. If I hadn't seen the way he behaved at the wedding, I never would have guessed he had that in him. Edit, as so many people are being kind, I'll update you. My friend hasn't been able to trust or date again yet, and it's been 4 years. However, she has become an amazingly brave woman, who's traveled to some amazing places alone and is now retraining to change careers. I think she learned never to be a backseat passenger in a relationship again. Honestly, the way she handled the whole thing, with such grace and determination, makes me so proud to be her friend. She basically told him when he left that he would never see her, or hear from her, or about her again. She dropped all friends that had a connection with him, after he left, and made sure he would always live his life wondering if he made the right decision and what she was up to. I really hope his dying thought is about her, and I know for a fact hers won't be about him. She'll find real love. I live for these threads. Anyway, I know a photographer who was offered to shoot a wedding on the Gold Coast, Australia. If you're from Australia, then you know the Gold Coast, while beautiful, has a lot of Jersey Shore types living there. It's kind of like Miami but no celebrities and very trashy. My friend is getting shots of everybody getting dressed up at the same time because the groomsmen, bride and bridesmaids are all getting ready in the same room. The groom decided to have his bucks party, bachelor, stag do, the night before, so they're all hunger over a shit and snorting line after line of coke. Something that is making my photographer friend's job hard because she can't get any nice shots of the groom or groomsmen without these illicit drugs in view. The energy in the room is getting uncomfortable, so the bride asks if they could take it easy on the coke and get a couple of nice photos. The groom yells, "Shut up, cunt and keeps snorting. The girl who got my friend the gig said they divorced like 4 months later. Another friend of mine was pressured into marrying his girlfriend of like 8 years because she dropped an ultimatum. Propose to me within a year or we're done. He does, so they get married, but of every wedding photo she posted on Facebook, neither one of them looked happy. They divorced barely a year into their marriage. I know some people don't like the idea of marriage, but I always wonder how long-time couples fall apart after getting married. For all intents and purposes, if you're together for 8 years, you're probably already living together and used to each other. Finances change, but a lot of places already treat you similarly for legal and childcare purposes if you cohabitate for a long time versus being married. What changes? Is it just people panicking at the status change? Are these long-term couples actually together out of convenience, a lack of effort to find something new, and they start thinking on what they want more seriously? The most beautiful wedding I've been to ended in divorce. Venue was where the groom's father is buried, and he cried as he made his vows to the bride there. Turned out he'd been cheating on her for months and they divorced a while later. Something so repugnant about marrying someone you're cheating on practically over your father's grave. To date, it's the only wedding I've been to that ended in divorce. I'm a wedding photographer and I have a few of these. When a very young, not dating long couple say things like the partner is perfect and we never fight. When there's name calling, I particularly cringed at it's because we so get each other and are so comfortable that he can call me dumb slut as a nickname. They didn't last the year. One where the wedding was all about the groom promoting his band. He even sang his bride a song that was literally just him showing off his vocal range with some classic piece. She stood up and joined him on stage halfway through and he looked annoyed that he had to share the limelight. They lasted about 2 years. He was sleeping with the other vocalist in the band. So many of my friends' first marriages were within 1.5 years or less of graduating high school, and done exactly because of the no sex before marriage thing, or, if they didn't abide that, it was the well, we had sex so now we have to get married thing. I got engaged for the same reason, but Matrix dodged the bullet. Why? Yes, I am from the Midwest. Edit, JFC, I didn't expect this to explode, and I certainly didn't expect this sort to become an anthropology specimen for coasties and Europeans. Y'all need to understand that, to the people where I grew up, you're the weird ones. It's literally all I could have had much hope of knowing, before we got consistent internet access when I was 14, and then it took literally decades to unlearn. The populations in those areas are sparse, but cover a lot of the land mass of this country, and they vote consistently. It's concerning that such a politically powerful group is so thoroughly alien to you. Look into how much control Texas has over the whole nation's textbooks. For example, I know he's from the South, not the Midwest, but Drew Morgan is a pretty decent, and hilarious, resource if you want more insight. If you don't want the righties in these regions to succeed in burning this country down and, yes, taking you with us too, you gotta start doing better at understanding the people living right in the thick of it, not just treating us like a time capsule or a joke. We noticed during the wedding the soon-to-be mother-in-law of the bride was insufferable. Every chance she could she would make it about her and her son the groom. God forbid she let her new daughter-in-law have the spotlight. The mother-in-law had the photographer follow her around for most of the wedding. Most pictures have her in it. She was always near or around her son, but like always touching him too. It was weird. We joked that all 3 of them are going on honeymoon together. She gave an hour-long toast about how she is still the most important person in her son's life. I think she said something like, "You may be his wife, but he'll always be mommy's little boy." She always went into way too much detail about how she breastfed and changed his diapers. She danced with her son more than the bride, and I'm talking not 60-40, like 90% of the time it was mother and son dancing. At one point she was even bumping and grinding on him, so at no point did my girlfriend and I think the bride was going to put up with this crazy MILF for more than a couple of years. Sure enough, she got pregnant soon after the wedding. A couple months after the baby was born she filed for divorce. My best friend's wedding is tomorrow and I told her about how I've heard several wedding photographers, Videographers say that shoving cake in the face is almost a for sure factor that they're going to divorce. She told me, "Oh yeah, I told him not to, but he probably will anyways, so we'll see how this goes."